Imagine a political assassination so, so unnatural, like so cosmically wrong, that the very morning after it happens, the entire physical environment just begins to hallucinate.
Yeah, hallucinate is actually the perfect word for it.
Right, because, the sky goes completely dark in the middle of the day, and then a tiny, low-flying owl suddenly shoots up into the sky and slaughters this massive, majestic falcon.
It's such a striking disruption of nature.
And worst of all, the king's prize horses, like these beautiful, perfectly trained, obedient animals, they suddenly go feral. They break out of their stalls and literally begin eating each other.
It is a terrifying image. And the thing you have to realize is that it's entirely deliberate.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
For you listening right now, we are taking the most famous murder in Western literature, William Shakespeare's tragedy of Macbeth, and we're essentially putting it on trial.
But we aren't using an English court to do it.
Exactly. We are going to look at the bloody, tragic events of this Scottish play through a completely unexpected, basically 2,000-year-old lens.
Right, we're examining it through the classical Indian tradition of jurisprudence, specifically the framework of Dharmaśāstric, which encompasses these ancient Hindu legal, political, and ethical texts.
I've got our stack of sources spread out on the table right here. And the anchor for our conversation today is this fascinating academic article. It's titled A Dharmaśāstric Reading of Shakespeare's Macbeth.
By Dr. Jaswankumar V. Rathod, yes.
Yeah. But to really understand this framework, we are pulling from foundational Indian texts that are, they're thousands of years old. I'm looking at excerpts from the Mahābhārata, specifically the Śāntiparva, which is the Book of Peace.
We've also got the Manusmriti in here, which is a foundational legal text.
Right. And Kautilya's Arthashastra, which is this ancient masterpiece of political science. And obviously a very well-worn copy of Shakespeare's original play.
And I think it's important to state up front that the paradigm shift this stack of sources requires of us, it's massive.
Oh, totally. Because when Westerners, or really anyone educated in the standard Western literary tradition, when we read Macbeth, we are trained to look at it through a very specific historical keyhole, right?
Exactly. We're taught to view it through the Great Chain of Being, or King James I's theory of the divine right of kings.
Or, we view it through the standard Christian concepts of original sin, temptation, and damnation.
Right, exactly. The standard high school English class interpretation.
Yeah, basically that God picked the king. The king is God's literal representative on earth. And if you kill the king, well, you are messing with God's direct appointee, so nature throws a fit.
And while those Western structural models are incredibly valuable, and they were certainly intended by the English culture of the 17th century, applying the ancient Indian framework of Dharmaśāstra reveals something arguably much deeper.
Really? How so?
Well, it strips away the localized 11th century Scottish politics. When you view the play through this ancient Indian legal philosophy, it becomes this flawless mechanical illustration of inevitable cosmic correction.
Oh, wow. I love that phrasing. Cosmic correction. It takes it from being just a story about a bad guy who wants a crown to a story about the actual structural fabric of reality unraveling because a fundamental law of physics was broken.
That's exactly it. It's structural.
So for you listening right now, maybe on your commute or while you're making dinner, I want you to hold on to this question as we go. What actually happens when leaders prioritize their personal ambition over their moral duty?
It's the central question of the text.
Right. How does a society unravel? What are the actual mechanics of that collapse? And more importantly, how does it heal? Okay, let's unpack this.
So before we can understand how Macbeth breaks the world, we have to spend some time understanding what holds the world together in this Eastern philosophical tradition.
Makes sense. We need to look at the blueprint.
Exactly. The blueprint of the cosmos. And that brings us to two foundational, deeply interconnected concepts, which are Dharma and Rājadharma.
Let's start with Dharma, because looking through the article here, it is a word that completely defies a simple English translation.
It really does. It's incredibly dense.
The author notes that it's a word signifying the law and force of regulation behind the movement of planets, stars, and galaxies. But then it also signifies the duty of a single person in human society.
Yes, the macro and the micro.
Right. But those feel like two totally different things to a modern Western mind, like astronomy and ethics.
They do feel different because, well, in the West, we compartmentalize everything. But to get to the core of it, we have to look at the ancient Sanskrit etymology. The word dharma comes from the Sanskrit root dri.
Dri, D-H-R-I.
Yes. And dri means to sustain, to uphold, to support, or to bear.
Okay, to sustain or uphold.
Right. It is the invisible principle that sustains the entire cosmos. The ancient Indian sages, the intuitive minds who composed these texts, they looked at the world and saw an underlying power behind the rhythm of the universe.
Like the changing of the seasons or the cycle of day and night.
Exactly. The behavior of animals, the moral obligations of humans. They didn't see these as separate disciplines like physics, biology, and ethics. They saw one single sustaining force, and they named it Dharma.
So it's not just a list of human laws. I mean, it's not some dusty book in a courthouse saying don't steal or pay your taxes.
Not at all. Think of it more like gravity.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is the unseen force behind the movement of the tides, and it is the exact same unseen force behind human morality. They're part of the same interconnected web. In the older Vedic literature, this dynamic, immutable order of the universe was termed Rita.
Rita. RTA. Okay, let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this because I want to be clear for the listener. If I jump off a building, I break the physical law of gravity and I hit the ground.
Right?
But if I steal from my neighbor, I break the moral law of Dharma and what? I hit a cosmic ground.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. Yes, exactly. You hit a cosmic ground.
Right.
Rita is the cosmic order that extends from the infinite galaxies all the way down to the infinitesimal atom. It is inviolable. It's everywhere, basically.
The Aitareya Upanishad explains that the absolute reality is both universal and particular. The wholeness of the universe is the bedrock of the wholeness of the individual.
So the big picture and the small picture are identical.
Right. So when we talk about Dharma, we are talking about a human acting in accordance with Rita, this cosmic order. You cannot break the moral law without causing a fracture in the physical universe because, well, they are made of the exact same material.
Wow. Which brings us to a massive question. If the universe is held together by this invisible structural force of Dharma, what is the role of the person sitting on the throne? The king.
Because human society is naturally messy and chaotic, right?
Exactly. It's so messy. And this is where the second concept from our sources comes in. Rājadharma.
Right. Rājadharma translates directly to the duty of the king. And this is where we see a profound divergence from the European models that Shakespeare would have been familiar with.
How say it?
Well, in the Dharmaśāstric tradition, the institution of kingship is divinely ordained, sure, but it is strictly functional. Wait, strictly functional. I want to read a section from my notes here. Pulled from the Manusmriti, it describes the origin of kingship.
Go for it.
So it says that early humanity was scattered, totally terrified and running in all directions. So the Lord created a king to protect creation, taking particles of 8 guardian deities to build him. The sun, the wind, fire, the moon.
Yes. The text literally says the king is an earthly manifestation of divine energy built from these elements so he can perform specific functions.
Functions like tasks.
Exactly. He needs the illumination of the sun to see the truth, the fluid justice of the water deity of Varuna, the purifying power of fire.
But wait, hold on. I'm looking at this and thinking, isn't that just the divine right of kings? I mean, if the gods built him out of magical deity particles, doesn't that mean he has a blank check from God to do whatever he wants?
That's the assumption we usually make, yeah.
Right. Like, how is that different from King Chung saying, I answer only to heaven?
I'm so glad you brought that up because it is the critical distinction we have to make here. In the Western tradition of the Stuarts, the king is God's minister on earth, answering only to God. The king literally is the law.
Right. He makes the rules.
But the source material from the Indian Journal of Political Science explicitly states the exact opposite for this framework. In the Indian tradition, the law, meaning dharma, is supreme. The king's authority is entirely subordinate to the law.
Oh, wow. So the law is above the king.
Yes. Always. The king's divinity does not afford him any immunity or privilege whatsoever. He is created by the divine, yes, but he is created as an instrument.
The tool.
Exactly. His primary purpose is prajapalana, which means the protection of his subjects, and ensuring yogaksema, which is public welfare and security.
Okay, so if I can try an analogy here just to make this concrete, the king isn't a dictator who owns the building. He's more like a cosmic load-bearing pillar.
The load-bearing pillar, I like that.
Yeah, like the architect put him there just to hold the roof up. And his only job, his Rājadharma, is to stand straight and protect the people inside from the elements.
That is a perfect analogy, and the Mahābhārata actually takes it even further. The Śāntiparva states very firmly that a king who fails to protect his subjects or who becomes corrupt in his character ceases to be considered divine.
Wait, he loses his divine status?
Yes, he actually becomes demonic. He forfeits his legitimacy entirely. His divinity is strictly conditional upon his adherence to his duty.
That is heavy. So if you don't do the job of protecting the people, you aren't the king anymore. You're just a demon occupying the throne.
Exactly.
If you think about that in the context of modern leadership, and for the listener, whether you're thinking about politics or just business, like a CEO, we so often focus entirely on the rights of the leader.
Right, the privileges of power.
Yeah, the privileges of the office, the golden parachute, the corner office. But this ancient system focuses entirely on the duty, the dharma, of the leader.
It is a profound level of accountability. The text suggests that where there is a strong sense of duty, there exists both dharma and prosperity.
Okay, so we have the blueprint of the cosmos established. The universe relies on dharma to keep the stars spinning, and human society relies on a king practicing Rājadharma to keep the chaos at bay.
Correct.
Let's take this ancient framework and apply it directly to the beginning of Shakespeare's Macbeth. Let's look at King Duncan.
This is where it gets really interesting, because when modern audiences, or even literary critics, analyze Macbeth, King Duncan is often perceived as a bit naive.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He gets assassinated in his sleep by his own host in Act 2. He is often viewed as this weak, overly trusting old man.
I think that's the standard interpretation, yeah.
I'll admit that was always my read. You read the play and you just think, come on, Duncan, open your eyes. Macbeth is clearly plotting something.
But when you look at him through the Dharmaśāstric lens, Duncan is not weak at all. He is something entirely different. He is the absolute baseline of perfect order.
I actually went back and reread Act 1 with this in mind, and it completely changed how I saw him.
How so?
Well, when we meet Duncan, Scotland is in absolute crisis. I mean, they are being invaded by the King of Norway, and they have massive internal rebellions led by MacDonald and the traitorous Thane of Cawdor. It's a total bloodbath.
It's chaos.
But look at how Duncan handles it. He doesn't panic. He relies on his generals, Macbeth and Banquo. He is serving as this calm, organizing center of the state.
He is perfectly fulfilling his Rājadharma. In Dharmaśāstra, a king has a continuous, necessary duty called Akashatana.
What does that translate to?
It translates roughly to the pruning of thorns or the clearing of internal dangers to the state.
The pruning of thorns. I love that imagery. It sounds almost agricultural.
It is deeply agricultural. A kingdom is often viewed as an organic entity, like a garden. And Duncan does exactly this. He receives news of the battlefield victory, and what is his immediate decisive action?
He executes the unfaithful Thane of Cawdor.
Exactly. He removes a massive thorn that was choking the state. And then he transfers that title and land to Macbeth, rewarding a loyal servant. He is acting as the immune system of the kingdom.
Our sources actually bring up an incredible metaphor from Shakespeare's own text that matches this perfectly. Duncan is constantly talking in terms of agriculture, planting, and growing.
He really is.
Yeah, like when he embraces Macbeth after the battle. I have the quote right here. Duncan says, "I have begun to plant thee and will labor to make thee full of growing."
The alignment there is just stunning. It perfectly echoes the Śāntiparva's description of a righteous king. The Mahābhārata says a king should be like a father to his subjects, rejoicing in their growth.
Like a literal gardener.
Yes. The specific Sanskrit term used is kinosha, which means a righteous gardener. A king is a gardener who protects his crops, waters the fruitful plants, and relentlessly uproots the weeds.
So Duncan isn't some naive, weak old man. He's the ultimate kinosha. He views his nobles not as rivals to be paranoid about, but as plants in his garden that he genuinely wants to see thrive. He is watering Macbeth.
That's a beautiful way to put it. He's watering Macbeth.
And here is the craziest part. Macbeth knows this.
He does. Macbeth is fully aware of Duncan's righteousness.
Right before Macbeth kills him, in Act 1, Scene 7, Macbeth has this agonizing soliloquy.
Yeah.
He is pacing around his castle trying to talk himself out of the murder, and he actually admits how perfect Duncan is.
Do you have the text there?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Macbeth says, "Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued, against the deep damnation of his taking off."
That phrase right there, clear in his great office, is absolutely crucial. In Indian legal theory, this represents a concept called shokam, or purity.
Purity of character.
Yes. A king's personal virtue, his humility, his self-control, these are directly tied to his political legitimacy. A clear, pure mind creates a peaceful kingdom where society operates in structural harmony.
It's like Duncan is a tuning fork, vibrating at the exact perfect frequency of the universe. And because he is so pure, All of Scotland is resonating with him.
The laws of nature and the laws of society match perfectly under his rule.
Right, he is that load-bearing pillar we talked about, providing a massive defensive shield against chaos.
And that is exactly why the transition into the next act of the play is so devastating. We move from perfect resonating order to the catalyst of total chaos, the murder of King Duncan.
Because if Duncan is the cosmic pillar holding up the roof of reality in Scotland, chopping him down in his sleep isn't just a political assassination.
No, it's not.
It's not just a coup d'etat, it is the breaking of the universe.
The Manusmriti warns that attacking a righteous king invites immense, incalculable cosmic consequences. It states a king should not be despised, for he is a great deity standing in human form.
So the stakes are infinitely higher than just stealing a crown.
Yes. By murdering Duncan, Macbeth isn't just committing a felony, he is committing absolute adharma. He is introducing a fundamental corruption into the operating code of the universe.
And the depth of this transgression is just staggering when you break it down through the Dharmaśāstras. Let's look closely at that same soliloquy from Macbeth.
Here he's weighing the moral implication.
Right, he's agonizing over the moral math of what he's about to do. He says, he's here in double trust. First, as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed. Then, as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself.
In that single brilliant piece of dialogue, Shakespeare perfectly outlines three foundational sacred social bonds defined in ancient Indian texts that Macbeth is consciously deciding to obliterate.
Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one?
First, there's Vami Bhakti, which is the duty and devotion of a subject to his king.
Right, the political loyalty.
Second is Jati Dharma, the duty of a kinsman to protect his family.
Because they're cousins.
Exactly. And third, and perhaps most profoundly in this context, Atithi Dharma.
Wait, pause. I really want to slow down and dig into that last one. Atithi Dharma. Because to a modern listener, being a bad host means, I don't know, you burned the dinner or you didn't put out fresh towels in the guest room.
Right, it's a social faux pas.
Yeah. But in this philosophy, you're saying it's a cosmic crime.
It is considered an absolute moral failure of the highest order. The sacred duty of a host to a guest is a massive pillar of Dharma. The Taittiriya Upanishad states a very famous injunction, Atithi Devo Bhava.
What does that mean?
It means, let the guest be treated as God.
As God. Literally.
Yes. The guest who arrives at your door represents the divine presence actively testing your virtue. To invite a guest into your home, to offer them the sacred protection of your roof, to share bread with them, and then to murder them while they sleep in the very bed you provided.
It's unthinkable.
It completely destroys both individual and collective dharma. You aren't just betraying a man, you are betraying the universe's trust. You are murdering a manifestation of the divine.
Okay, here is where it gets really fascinating, because Macbeth is wrestling with this. Yeah. He knows his dharma. His conscience is functioning perfectly right up until the moment he draws the dagger.
He is fully aware of the gravity of the act.
He actually decides not to do it. He tells his wife, we will proceed no further in this business. But then we look at Lady Macbeth.
Yes, Lady Macbeth serves a very specific dark function in this framework.
She actively attacks his sense of duty. When he tries to back out, she mocks his humanity, she attacks his masculinity. And earlier, she has that famous scene where she asks the dark spirits to unsex her and fill her from the crown to the toe with direst cruelty.
She tells the spirits to take her milk for gall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how does she fit into the Dharmaśāstric reading?
Through the Indian philosophical lens, Lady Macbeth is acting as an active, conscious agent of adharma. She is deliberately trying to sever herself and her husband from the natural, moral order of right.
She's pulling him away from the structural reality.
Right. She systematically replaces his dharma with toxic ambition, demanding that he ignore those cosmic laws of Swami Bhakti and Atipi Dharma just to seize temporary material power.
And her manipulation works. Macbeth breaks. He takes the knife, goes into Duncan's chamber, and commits the murder. And the second the knife goes in, the second the king's blood is spilled, the environment reacts instantly.
Because, as we established, human actions and cosmic environments are deeply interconnected.
Yes. The breaking of Dharma triggers a terrifying immediate state of nature. And this brings us to one of the most vital concepts in classical Indian political philosophy, something called mātsyanyāya.
Mātsyanyāya, the law of the fish.
The law of the fish. I love the visceral imagery of that.
It is incredibly descriptive. Mātsyanyāya describes a state of total anarchy where the larger fish eat the smaller fish. The Mahābhārata explains that without a righteous king, when there is no load-bearing pillar to enforce Dharma, society reverts to a predatory state.
A free-for-all.
Exactly. The weaker are brutally oppressed by the stronger, no one has control over their own possessions, and moral boundaries simply vanish.
It's the ultimate realization of what happens when the architect's pillar crumbles. The roof just caves in. And Shakespeare, seemingly without knowing any ancient Indian philosophy whatsoever, depicts Mātsyanyāya perfectly.
He absolutely does.
It gave me chills rereading it. The morning after Duncan dies, before anyone even knows he's dead, the natural hierarchy is already completely inverted.
The omens described in the play are a literal physical manifestation of the law of the fish.
I really want to paint this picture for the listener because it's so visceral. So, Act 2, Scene 4. There's a scene with an old man and a nobleman named Ross. They're standing outside the castle, and they're just horrified by how bizarre the natural world is acting.
Right, they're exchanging notes on the weather, basically.
Yeah, but nightmare weather. Ross says, on Tuesday last, a falcon towering in her pride of place was by a mousing owl hawked at and killed.
Consider the structural symbolism of that event. A falcon is a noble diurnal predator that flies high in the sky. It represents the king, the apex of the natural order.
Okay, so the falcon is Duncan.
Exactly. And an owl is a lower, nocturnal predator that hunts mice on the ground in the dark. The owl flying up into the sky to kill the falcon is an exact, unnatural inversion of the hierarchy.
Because owls don't hunt falcons.
Never. It perfectly, biologically mirrors a lesser subject murdering his sovereign in the dead of night.
But it gets so much worse. Royce then talks about Duncan's horses. He says these beautiful, swift horses, the absolute best of their breed, suddenly turned wild. They broke their stalls, refusing to be obedient, acting like they were at war with mankind itself.
And then the climax of that horror.
Yes. The old man replies with one of the most chilling lines in the play. He says, "'Tis said they eat each other."
Herbivores turning into cannibals.
It's insane.
It is a direct, poetic depiction of mātsyanyāya. Without a legitimate king to embody and enforce Dharma, the animal and human worlds lose their structural boundaries. The rules of nature are suspended. The larger fish eats the smaller fish. The horses eat the horses.
I really want you, listening right now, to try to imagine this. Imagine the exact moment a society realizes the social contract is just gone. That terrifying ice-in-your-veins realization that the rules no longer apply.
It's a very primal fear.
It is. The police aren't coming, the courts are corrupt, the sky is literally dark during the day. The witches in the very first scene of the play chant, fair is foul, and foul is fair.
Which is the perfect summary.
Right. Through this lens, that isn't just a spooky rhyme to set the mood. It is the literal motto of Mātsyanyāya.
It perfectly encapsulates the moral inversion of a broken universe. When Dharma is destroyed, self-interest, violence, and viciousness become the only rules for survival. Good becomes bad, and bad becomes good.
Okay, so Macbeth has successfully stolen the throne. The pillar is broken, the cosmos is hallucinating, but he's wearing the crown. But here's the problem. To keep the throne, he has to actually rule.
Right, the day-to-day governance.
Yeah, he has to govern a society that he just fundamentally broke. How does an illegitimate ruler actually maintain control over a society that intuitively knows he shouldn't be there?
In this framework, he has to misuse something called Daṇḍa.
Daṇḍa, what is that?
Daṇḍa literally translates to a staff or a scepter. In political philosophy, it represents the coercive power of the state. The legal right to punish, to imprison, to use military force.
Like the monopoly on violence?
Exactly.
All right.
It is the necessary force that a righteous king uses to maintain order and prune the thorns, as we discussed earlier with Duncan. The Mahābhārata states that the rod of punishment is the one thing in this world upon which everything depends.
Okay, but there has to be a massive warning label on Daṇḍa, right? If it's the state's monopoly on violence, it's incredibly dangerous.
Severe warning label, yes. The Manusmriti warns that debt is a brilliant, powerful luster, but it cannot be held by the undisciplined. It is a terrifying living force.
A living force.
Yes. If an unjust king uses it for personal gain or swerves from righteousness, the text says debt strikes down the king himself. It is a double-edged sword without a hilt. If you don't possess the profound moral purity to wield it safely, it will bleed you dry.
And to wield it safely, the sources say a ruler needs a specific trait. something called Indriya Jaya.
Right. Indriya Jaya means the total conquest of one's own senses and internal desires. The Yājñavalkya Smriti insists a king must be free from vices born of desire, which is kama, and anger, which is krodha.
He has to have a handle on his own ego.
Precisely. He must be free of greed, lobha, and delusion. He has to have conquered his own mind before he can safely conquer others.
Which is famously the exact opposite of Macbeth. I mean, Macbeth hasn't conquered his mind. His mind is completely conquered.
He is a slave to it.
Yes. He is consumed by kama, his desperate desire for power, and lobha, his greed to keep it at all costs. And above all, he is driven by terror. He is so paranoid.
And fear is the ultimate destroyer of Indriya Jaya.
So when he picks up the Daṇḍa, the scepter of Scotland, he doesn't use it to punish criminals or protect the weak. He uses it to eliminate his own paranoia. He descends into what the texts call asurivritti.
Asurivritti translates to tyrannical, demonic behavior. He perverts the very mechanism of state power.
Let's walk through how he does this, because it is a systematic dismantling of justice. First, he targets his former best friend, Banquo. Macbeth is terrified of Banquo. But I want to look closely at why he is terrified.
It's a very revealing moment.
It is. Macbeth has a speech where he says, "In his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. He hath the wisdom that doth guide his valor to act in safety."
This is deeply revealing psychologically. Macbeth fears Banquo precisely because Banquo possesses the exact traits of a true Dharmaśāstric king.
Courage and wisdom.
Exactly. Courage balanced by wisdom and immense self-control. Banquo has Indriya Jaya. Macbeth knows deep down that he lacks it. So Banquo's mere existence is a walking, breathing spotlight, highlighting Macbeth's illegitimacy.
So what does Macbeth do with the power of the state? He hires assassins to murder Banquo and his young son in the dark. Instead of being the righteous gardener pulling up weeds, Macbeth has become a kanaka.
A toxic thorn.
Yes, a thorn to his own people. He is using the don't to murder the righteous.
And that perversion of power only accelerates as the play goes on. The apex of his tyranny, the absolute bottom of the moral abyss, is the slaughter of Macduff's family.
Right. Macduff, who is a noble, flees to England to find help. Macbeth finds out, and he orders his army to attack Macduff's completely undefended castle.
It's a horrific scene.
He says, "Give to the edge of the sword his wife, his babes, and all unfortunate souls that trace him in his line." It's just horrifying.
If we look at the Dharmaśāstric rules of warfare, known as Yājñavalkya, the strict codes of martial conduct absolutely forbid the killing of non-combatants, women, and children under any circumstances.
It's a war crime, essentially.
It is. You cannot strike those who are unarmed, sleeping, or innocent. Macbeth's order yields zero strategic military benefit. It doesn't help him win a war. It is an act of pure, unadulterated malice born of sheer terror. He has completely abandoned any pretense of being a human king fulfilling Rājadharma.
So if you're a citizen of Scotland listening to this play unfold, what does this mean for your daily life? Under Macbeth, Scotland stops being a nation and literally becomes a slaughterhouse.
The physical toll is immense.
Ross, that same nobleman who saw the horses eat each other, describes the country later in the play. He says it cannot be called our mother, but our grave, where sighs and groans and shrieks that rent the air are made, not marked. The state's protective power, the Daṇḍa, has been inverted into a weapon of mass terror.
According to the ancient lawgiver Manu, a king who fails to protect his people while aggressively extracting their resources is actually collecting their sin.
Collecting their sin. That's an intense image.
It is. He becomes consumed by the fire of his own unrighteousness. By misdirecting the Daṇḍa, Macbeth has turned cosmic retribution into an independent living force that will actively work to remove him.
Which brings us to perhaps the most fascinating psychological part of the play, the internal rot. Because while the country is bleeding out externally, the Macbeths are rotting internally.
It's a simultaneous collapse.
I want to shift gears here from political science to spiritual psychology, because they don't just get overthrown by an army, they collapse from the inside out.
This is where we clearly see the mechanics of karma and papa in action.
Let's define papa. I've seen it translated simply as sin, but that feels a bit too Western, a bit too Christian for this context.
You're right, sin is an inadequate translation. Papa is better understood as moral impurity or cosmic pollution.
Cosmic pollution, okay.
In Hindu jurisprudence, when you commit an intentional grievous crime, adyata kata papa, it isn't just a legal violation that gets written down in a ledger somewhere. It leaves an indelible, permanent mark on your siddha, your mind, or consciousness. It causes profound internal pollution.
Think of the human mind like the operating system of a computer. Papa isn't just a bad file you created that you can drag to the trash can and delete. It's a corrupt line of code written directly into the kernel of the operating system.
That's a great modern analogy.
Yeah, the moment Macbeth commits the murder, his OS starts throwing fatal errors.
And we see those fatal errors instantly.
Right after he kills Duncan, he comes staggering back to his wife, holding the bloody daggers, and he has this terrifying auditory hallucination. He says, "Methought I heard a voice cry, 'Sleep no more.'" Macbeth does murder sleep.
He realizes he's permanently altered himself.
He talks about innocent sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care. He realizes instantly that he is cursed with permanent insomnia.
This is a profound spiritual punishment in the Indian tradition. In philosophical texts, there is a vital concept called supti.
Supti, what is that?
Supti is deep, peaceful, dreamless sleep. It is a state where the individual soul rests in perfect alignment with the universal order, completely free from ego-driven desires and anxieties.
So by committing regicide, by committing an act of absolute ego and a karma, Macbeth has severed his connection to that universal harmony. His corrupted kernel can't access Supti anymore. The code is broken.
Exactly. The Manusmriti states that unrighteousness practiced in this world doesn't always bear fruit immediately, but advancing step by step, it cuts off the very roots of the person who committed it.
It slowly destroys you from the bottom up.
Yes. Macbeth's mind becomes a chaotic, terrifying battleground because he has literally uprooted himself from the cosmos. He cannot find rest because he is at war with reality.
And then there is Lady Macbeth, who gives us perhaps the most chilling contrast in the entire play. Right after the murder, Macbeth is freaking out, looking at his bloody hands, and Lady Macbeth is totally calm, almost pragmatic.
She's completely detached.
She says, "A little water clears us of this deed." How easy is it then?
This is a masterful study in the fatal misunderstanding of Dharma. She is entirely confusing Bahya Shokam with Antara Shokam.
Okay, let's break those down. What is the difference?
Bahya Shokam is external, physical cleanliness. It is washing dirt or literal blood off your skin with physical water.
Okay, so just taking a bath.
Right. But Antara Shokam is internal moral purity. It is the cleansing of Papa, the purification of the mind. Lady Macbeth arrogantly believes a cosmic, spiritual crime can be solved with a simple physical remedy.
She thinks she can just wash the universe's blood off her hands with tap water.
Precisely. But physical water cannot wash away internal moral pollution. To cleanse Papa requires prayashita, deep, rigorous penance, radical truth, and structural restoration of the harm done.
Which she definitely does not do.
No, because she completely bypasses this necessary moral reckoning, her guilt isn't resolved, it is merely repressed. She shoves it deep into her subconscious.
And if there is one thing we know about human psychology, it's that repressed guilt always comes back with a vengeance. It festers. Fast forward to Act 5, and we get the tragic, inevitable payoff.
The sleepwalking scene.
Yes, Lady Macbeth is sleepwalking. Her mind is completely fractured. She's wandering the halls at night, compulsively rubbing her hands together, desperately trying to wash an invisible stain. And she cries out, "Out, damn spot! Out, I say! All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand."
Her agonizing delusion that her hands are permanently stained with blood and her inability to rid herself of the smell is the ultimate proof that her antakarana, her internal mind, is deeply irreparably polluted.
The trauma is surfacing.
The perfumes of Arabia cannot cleanse her because the stench of death is coming from her soul, not her skin.
Even the doctor, who is called in to watch her sleepwalk, realizes he is totally out of his depth. He watches her for a few minutes and just says, "More needs she the divine than the physician."
The doctor is unwittingly acknowledging the Dharmaśāstric view of disease and madness here. Severe violations of Dharma, if left without genuine penance, manifest as mental chaos, horrifying hallucinations, and physical decay.
You literally get sick from the guilt.
Karma operates as an absolute, unyielding law of cause and effect. Her mind simply collapses under the crushing weight of her own unpurified actions.
It's terrifying, really. It tells us you can't cheat the universe, the bill always comes due, and it collects from your sanity. So let's look at the board. Macbeth is a paranoid tyrant ruling through terror, his wife is dying from psychological collapse, and Scotland is a mass grave.
It's the absolute lowest point of the cycle.
A universe out of balance like this will eventually forcefully right itself. The cosmos won't stay broken forever. Let's look at the cosmic correction. Let's look at how Dharma is restored to Scotland.
The restoration of Dharma begins with Malcolm. He is the rightful heir to the throne, the son of the murdered King Duncan.
But before Malcolm can return to claim the crown, He must prove that he is not just another ambitious nobleman seeking power. He has to prove he is a true, righteous king.
And he does this through a very specific test.
There is this incredible scene in Act 4 that often confuses modern readers. I know I was confused the first time I read it. Macduff goes to England to beg Malcolm to come back, raise an army, and save Scotland.
Right, he's asking for a savior.
But Malcolm doesn't just say, "Great, let's go." He tests Macduff. Malcolm pretends to be an absolute monster. He tells Macduff, "If I become king, I will be worse than Macbeth. I have endless lust, I have bottomless avarice, I will pour the sweet milk of Concord into hell and destroy all peace."
He is deliberately claiming to be the absolute embodiment of Adharma.
Right, and Macduff's reaction is what really matters here. Macduff doesn't say, "Well, look, as long as you aren't Macbeth, we'll take you." Lesser of two evils.
No, he doesn't compromise.
Not at all. Macduff breaks down. He falls into despair. He cries, "O Scotland, Scotland, when shalt thou see thy wholesome days again?" He basically tells Malcolm, "You aren't fit to live, let alone govern. We are doomed."
This test is crucial to the philosophical arc of the play, because it proves that Macduff truly understands Rājadharma.
How does it prove that?
Macduff knows that a ruler with uncontrolled desires, a ruler without Indriyajaya, will destroy the nation just as surely as Macbeth has. Macduff passes the test by categorically refusing to accept a corrupt king. He won't replace one broken pillar with another broken pillar.
And once Macduff passes that test, Malcolm drops the act. He reveals his true, pure nature. He takes it all back. He says he is actually unknown to woman, meaning he has total freedom from lust.
Yes.
He says he is scarcely have coveted mine own, meaning he isn't greedy. And he says his first false speaking was this lie he just told, meaning he delights in the truth.
If we map those specific virtues to the Dharmaśāstras, Malcolm passes the strict standards of the Yājñavalkya Smriti perfectly.
Let's mash those up.
Sure, so unknown to woman represents brahmacharya, the vital control over bodily impulses. Scarcely have coveted represents aloha, the absence of greed. Delighting in truth represents satya, complete alignment with the cosmic order of truth.
He's the anti-Macbeth. He has the Indriyajaya that Macbeth so desperately lacked.
Exactly. He has conquered his internal desires. He is not seeking the throne out of personal pleasure or kama. He is seeking it strictly out of obligation to restore Dharma.
So the true king is finally ready. The English army marches on Scotland, and Shakespeare sets the final climactic scene with this incredibly famous visual. Malcolm tells his soldiers to cut down the branches of Birnam wood and carry them in front of themselves to hide their numbers as they march on Macbeth's stronghold at Dunsinane.
It fulfills the witch's prophecy that Macbeth won't be defeated until the forest itself moves, yes. But symbolically, through our lens, it is much, much deeper.
It is nature, literally fighting back. It's not just clever military camouflage. It is a powerful, undeniable visual metaphor of the earth itself, the natural order of Raita, rising up to physically remove the unnatural tyrant.
It brings us right back to the beginning.
Remember the gardening metaphor. Macbeth was a toxic, invasive weed, and the forest is finally coming to uproot him.
And Macbeth's eventual death at the hands of Macduff is the final execution of cosmic Daṇḍa. The unjust, coercive force of violence that Macbeth used to rule and terrorize Scotland ultimately turns around and destroys him.
It rebounds on him.
Yes. The staff of punishment strikes down the undisciplined king, exactly as the Manusmriti promised it would.
Then Malcolm takes the throne. The tyrant's head is on a pike, and Malcolm gives a final speech promising to heal the bleeding country. He says he will perform his duties in measure, time, and place.
In measure, time, and place. This links directly to a fundamental Dharmaśāstric doctrine called Deshakalapatra.
Let's break that down as we wrap up. What does that mean?
It is the principle that true restorative justice requires actions, laws, and punishments to be measured carefully according to the specific place, which is disha, the specific time, kala, and the specific circumstance or person involved, patra.
So it's the exact opposite of Macbeth's erratic, paranoid, zero-context slaughter. Malcolm is promising a return to balanced, thoughtful, perfectly calibrated governance. Order is restored, the pillar is rebuilt, the universe can finally breathe again.
The cosmic cycle is complete. We moved from righteous kingship to usurpation, which led inevitably to the law of the fish and the perversion of power, resulting in psychological collapse, and finally, the restoration of cosmic balance.
It's absolutely breathtaking to think about it this way. Reading a 17th century English play through the lens of ancient Indian philosophy doesn't just give us neat academic parlor trick. It fundamentally deepens our understanding of both cultures. It shows us that this tragic arc is a deeply universal human story.
It proves that the laws of Dharma aren't just arbitrary cultural rules invented by one society. They are structural principles of the human condition recognized across civilizations.
It's all connected.
Political power that is stripped of moral obligation is inherently self-destructive. You cannot break the world without the world eventually breaking you.
I want to leave you, listening to this, with a final thought to mull over. We've spent this entire deep dive talking about kings and cosmic consequences, about how national leaders face the ultimate reckoning for perverting power. But what about the kingdoms we rule in our own lives?
A very compelling question.
Think about it. Your family, your workplace, your community, your friend group. You have influence there. If mātsyanyāya, the law of the fish, is always lurking just beneath the surface of our civilization, waiting for the load-bearing pillars to crack well, what daily acts of Dharma are you practicing to keep the chaos at bay? Are you pruning the thorns and watering the garden? Or are you letting personal ambitions sever your connection to the people around you? Just remember, the modern X-ray of our motivations might be murky, but the karma is always perfectly clear. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep digging into the sources around you, keep asking questions, and we will catch you next time.